Well, here it is, folks. The first Super Tournament of the year, 2015, the 77th Tata Steel Chess Tournament. Great action, great tournament, great world-class players. Don't miss any of the action. And here are the participants for the Tata Steel 2015. This is the Masters section. Hell of a lineup here, folks. Magnus Carlsen, current world champion, #1 rated in the world. Fabiano Caruana, Italian-American, playing for Italy, #2 in the world. Levin Aronian, great player, #6 in the world. Anish Giri from the Netherlands. You'll see a lot of Netherlands players in this tournament because they're playing in the Netherlands. Wesley So just switched from the Philippines to USA. I saw Wesley at Millionaire Chess in Las Vegas in October, #10 in the world. Maxime Vacher-Lagraf from France, #13. And I'm sure I'll butcher this name. Jav Tasizik, #50 in the world, from Poland. Timur Rajabov. I like Timur a lot. He's had a hard time the last year and a half, but he's still #20 in the world. Marine Ding from China. Jobava from Georgia. Exciting player. Look for crazy games with Jobava. And one of my personal favorites of all time, Vasily Ivanchuk from Ukraine. I'll tell you the truth, I like Vasily a lot. He's a really interesting guy. Hao Yifan from China, current women's world champion. Luke VanWely from the Netherlands. I met Luke once and got his autograph in 2010 in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania at the World Open. He's a pretty cool guy. And Ivan Saric from Croatia to round out the field. Average rating, 2746, category 20. This is a hell of a tournament, folks. I'll tell you, someday I'm going to put this on my bucket list. I live in the eastern United States in upstate New York, and I would love to go just once before I leave this world to go see that tournament. It's a really cool city. It's a really cool place. I'll just have to see someday I'll be able to make it. Anyway, stay tuned for all the action, all the great games. Hi folks, John Cordisco back again. Another game from one of my favorite tournaments, the 77th edition of Tata Steel Chess. This is the Masters section, round 4, between current world champion from Norway, highest rated player ever in the history of chess, Magnus Carlsen, and Luke VanWely from the Netherlands as black. I met Luke once, got his autograph in 2010 in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania at the World Open, and he's a pretty cool guy. Anyway, let's get to it. D4, knight f6. It's going to be a fianchetto Grunfeld. So we'll go through the first few moves here. I toy with a Grunfeld a little bit. I never could get the hang of it. Maybe I just haven't studied it enough. Knight c3 for Magnus. Knight c6. Now that's the computer doing that. That's telling you that everybody's ganging up on the isolated d-pawn. Castles, castles. d5. This game's a little tricky. You'll see it gets in a strange position here shortly. Knight out here. Now I don't like that already. I mean, I really had the knight go back to b8. But knight to a5 is the computer move. I mean, it just shows a tiny advantage for white. Pawn for that reason. D takes, knight takes. So that knight to a5 wasn't the end of the world. Got the knight back in the game. I really like the strong dark squared bishop for Carlsen. Whoops. Kind of missed my mark there. I like this dark squared bishop here. That thing is really strong. Rook to d1, hit the queen. Bishop d7. Bishop comes up. Queen c8. Sometimes you'll see this with fianchetto, where you get the queen-bishop battery will help get rid of the fianchetto bishop. Rook a to c1, bishop f5. This time he went after the queen instead. VanWely went e4. Magnus moved to pin that knight. Now that's an incredibly annoying pin. I mean, how are you going to get rid of that? You're going to have to screw up your pawn structure here. Knight to b5, knight to d5 are the two moves for white. VanWely goes queen to b3, which is very interesting. Here you go, knight to d5 instead. After e5, bishop e3, knight takes, rook takes. With a half a pawn, maybe a little better advantage for white. Nothing to write home about. After queen to b3, queen to e6. Now Magnus is looking to trade. Now, you're Magnus. What do you do here? Do you take with the f-pawn? Or do you take with the bishop? I like the bishop because this will screw up your pawns. But Magnus being Magnus picked the better move. And according to the computer, the f-pawn takes is the better move. That's how important this pin is. It's actually more important than these double pawns. e5 to block off that dark squared bishop. Now, I like that a lot. It looks great. Let's go back here. That is the computer move. With rook to d3, a very distant second. Knight to d5. Of course, he almost has to take. Because you're going to have knight takes bishop. And then rook takes. And that's really annoying pin now. Knight takes, pawn takes. Knight g5. e6. Doesn't take the bishop. Or doesn't take the knight, or rook, excuse me. And I'll tell you what, you or I would take that in a second. But he doesn't. He plays the best move. And that's e6. That d5 pawn is incredibly important. He tries to chase the bishop off. He hits the knight. Pawn takes, bishop takes, and knight takes. Now, granted, white has the bishop pair. The computer shows the game right now is 0.00 dead even. Well, I'll tell you, I'd rather have 2 extra pawns here than 2 extra pawns here all day. You're going to see Luke gets in a jam with his bishops on the F file. Bishop F4, that seems straightforward enough. Knight C6. He just wants to keep that knight. I think he's doing 2 things. He's blocking off this rook, and he's also helping out as he starts pushing these pawns down the center. Not as good as knight takes. And after bishop H3, E5, bishop G5. And I just don't care for that. Knight C6, G5, rook to C2 is the computer's choice. I'll tell you, it's hard pressed to find a move here. Rook C2 saves the B pawn, but it really doesn't save it because if the bishop takes, rook comes over and you win this pawn here. But G5, bishop takes. I like rook B1. But VanWely decided to go rook to C2. I don't know why. It's a close second in score. Well, maybe not a close second. It's a distant second in score. Rook to B1 was better, and I'll show you why. After rook to B1, bishop checks, king H1. I still like black here. But after rook C2, bishop D4 check, king moves, rook comes over. Now Magnus is getting ready to start pushing those pawns. Rook to B1, rook F7. It's hard pressed to find a move here for white. So I think that's the best move he could have made. Bishop H3, hitting the pawn here. Rook E8. Rook E2. He's lining up himself against those pawns, which is probably the way to go. E5. Rook. And you can see why pawn can't take, because the rook checks. He doubles up the rooks there. Bishop B6. He does that on purpose. E takes. Now what's the correct move here for white? What would you do if you were white right here? If you snap off that rook at f7, what would you do? Or would you play g takes f4? Because the rook still can't move even after you play that move. VanWely decides to take the pawn. If he had taken the pawn instead here, g takes f7, king, bishop takes, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes, king g2, it still sucks for white, but not nearly as bad as 2 pawns for a rook. After rook to b7, he goes f3. Wow. VanWely is screwed. Rook has to move, then the king moves, bishop takes, rook takes, king takes. For those of you that were wondering, rook to b1 wouldn't have changed anything, and then rook to f5. After rook takes f7, king takes, rook to d3, f2, king up, king e6. This is a piece of cake for Magnus. h4, bishop back, rook f3, knight e5, rook to f6 check, king e7, a4, bishop comes over. You got those 2 minor pieces against the rook, not so easy. g4, a5 might have been the last chance for counterplay according to the computer. Knight takes, rook to f4, hitting both pieces. And look at this move. Now, look at the winning move here. The winning move for black. Can you find it? Knight to h2. Wow, wow, wow. Amazing stuff. If the king takes here, this rook comes over with a pin. Rook takes f2. Bishop takes. The white king takes one of the minor pieces. You still lose. It's just lost. So that's where Luke VanWely threw in the towel. So the first win for Magnus in the 77th edition of Tata Steel Chess 2015. Pretty good game. Luke just miscued. But that knight to h2, that was a really cute move. So Magnus finally has a win. He has 2 draws, a loss, and a win for a total of 2 points out of 4 games. Anyway, look for another game from round 4. Another amazing Ivanchuk game. Ivanchuk is just kicking everybody's behind. He's doing amazing. I really like Ivanchuk a lot. He's a really, really interesting guy. Anyway, folks, look for those games. And as I always say, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.